He said, when did we meet? Okay, you want to tell him that?
20 years ago. Karan is a part of this story. You get what I mean?
Are you?
Yes.
Okay, come on over here.
So Karan is definitely a part of this story. Like, speaking of that, so we met almost 20 years ago.
That's my cousin Karan.
That's Karan.
Hey, everybody.
And you want me to switch?
Yeah.
She got the middle.
Don't put me on the end.
So yeah, it was almost 20 years ago. I had done a website that when I was in college.
For years, the world admired a fairy tale. What no one heard was the pressure cracking it open. According to whispers from inside that circle, the trouble between Candy Burris and Todd Tucker didn't arrive with a bang. It supposedly seeped in slowly, one quiet compromise at a time, until a single audio message flipped the entire story upside down. Those close to the situation claimed Todd began to feel outnumbered inside his own marriage. Not publicly, not in interviews, but in the hidden corners where decisions are really forged, midnight calls, rearranged plans, strategic check-ins that didn't include him. People around him say it was no longer just two in that relationship. Not a body, but an influence. Behind closed doors, the arguments reportedly grew darker, longer, heavier, allegedly about loyalty, allegedly about dignity. And then came the holiday. A dinner, they say, where the kitchen swallowed over an hour of whispered conversation, while Todd remained frozen on the other side of the room, untouched and unseen. Later that night, at precisely 3:04 a.m., someone pressed record. "I'm done pretending," the voice is rumored to confess. They call it envy. It's not. It's about being erased, and I was. By morning, rumor engines were already roaring, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was the same again.
Or you can hit up Don Juan.
You can hit me.
Hit him in the DMs.
Don, do you check your DMs?
Sometimes.
He's more, you gotta
hit me on email.
Business.
Yeah, the DM part, that gets scary. My DM stuff, that'd be scary.
Yeah.
People post too much.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
For months, everything looked perfect from the outside. New photos still dropped. Smiles were still posted. Business deals still rolled out like nothing had shifted. But according to those who say they were close enough to feel the air change, the marriage had already gone cold long before the public sensed a thing. Not explosively, not dramatically, silently. Friends later claimed the fracture didn't arrive through betrayal. It arrived through scheduling apps, through last-minute changes, through unanswered calls, through meetings Todd used to sit in, and then slowly, inexplicably, stopped being invited to. Sources insist Todd began to suspect that choices were being made somewhere else long before they ever passed through him. Show decisions, brand moves, home routines, private plans. All of it, they allege, filtered through one figure. Not as an enemy, not on documents, but as force. And force doesn't debate. It drags. Those close to Todd say he kept describing the same sensation on repeat, that there was always a third shadow in the room. Not visible, but functional. A presence that never sat down, it loomed. And the more it lingered, the smaller he felt inside his own relationship. People around Todd say he tried to explain it away at first. He didn't call it conflict, he called it planning. He didn't call it interference, he called it productivity. He didn't call it separation, he called it the grind. Then, according to insiders, the language changed. Private disputes, they say, began ending the same way every time. Todd was emotional, while others were logical. Todd was too attached, while others were forward-thinking. Todd was overthinking, while others were just executing. If he questioned a move, he was difficult. If he resisted, he was insecure. If he asked for air, it was messy. Sources describe the narrative as fixed. Todd equals the issue. And eventually, they say, he started wondering if it was true. Quietly, something else settled in, a new order inside the home. Certain talks vanished behind closed doors. Certain subjects vanished when he entered. Certain planning sessions stretched late into the night for no clear reason. Because nothing suffocates a marriage faster than realizing you're being deleted from it in real time. According to those closest to Todd, what wounded him most wasn't the choices. It was knowing he was no longer part of them. They say he repeated one line more than any other. "It feels like I'm married, but not included." What began as unease curdled into something heavier. Resentment. Not at his wife, but at the distance growing between them. That unseen gap. That widening quiet. And silence is never innocent. It always takes a side. Then came the online change. Disturbingly quiet. Fans would later spot it in pieces. Then all at once. Tags disappeared. Appearances stopped. No anniversaries. No couple posts. Only kids. Work. Trips apart. People inside the circle insist it wasn't branding. It was battle lines. Because, according to insiders, Todd no longer felt ignored. He felt Overwritten. Not romantically, not even emotionally. Organizationally. As if the marriage now functioned under a new command structure. One source who claims to have seen private texts says Todd typed one message late at night. Am I your partner? Or just an afterthought? No reply ever came. That, they say, is where the fracture became permanent. And then came Thanksgiving. To the world, it was another holiday moment. Behind those doors, sources allege it was the night nothing could be denied anymore. They say the kitchen became a closed world for more than an hour. Planning. Numbers. Futures being drawn out in ink. The kind of discussion that fills notebooks. Spreadsheets. Deadlines. While, according to those present, Todd sat somewhere else, uninterrupted, uninformed, uninvited. Relatives, insiders claim, sensed it immediately. Not in dialogue. In atmosphere. The way one half of the room tilted inward and one silhouette pulled back. Someone is rumored to have murmured, "This doesn't sound like a couple anymore." When the evening ended, there was no explosion. No shouting. No scenes. Just the soft click of a truck door. Alone. Sources say Todd stayed inside his vehicle. Lights off. Thoughts loud. At exactly 3:04 a.m., an audio file was created. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't furious. It was drained. Those familiar with it say the message went something like, "I can't keep pretending this is fine." They call it jealousy, but it's not. It's dignity, and I don't have any left. People who claim they listened to it say the final seconds held no sentences. Only breath. Unsteady. Weighted. Like someone finally dropping something too heavy to carry. By sunrise, the recording had traveled. By mistake? On purpose? With intent? No one knows. But before that night ended, titles began blinking across feeds. Trouble behind Candy and Todd's walls? Todd Tucker breaks his silence? Mystery audio leaks. No evidence was released. No words were printed. Only rumor. And when facts disappear, the internet invents. Then something else returned to the spotlight. Not from days ago. Not from months ago. From another lifetime. An old live stream. Once forgettable. Almost comforting. Until suddenly, it wasn't.
That is great. We disagree on this, so that's what part of the battle is. So guess what? Since we on here live with y'all, let's see what you guys think about that. Do you guys think that she should be doing a book about, I'm not talking about a memoir to be talking about all that. I'm not talking about that.
10 steps to being great.
You know, like I'm talking about those kind of books. Tell me what y'all think in the chat below.
Okay.
It was supposed to feel soft. It was supposed to sound safe. It was supposed to signal unity. But inside this new lens, fans started hearing something else. Not support. Control shifting hands. What once sounded like reassurance, now echoed like replacement. Post after post began popping up. Not claims. Not outright. But questions. Why did every decision lead back to the same place? When did Todd vanish from the process? Who was really steering the next move? Nothing could be confirmed. But the pattern refused to disappear. One blogger typed, "Love doesn't shatter in noise. It fades when someone else becomes the door to your world." Another wrote, "The worst loss isn't a rival. It's realizing your role keeps shrinking." By the weekend, the crowd had split in two. One side, "This is ridiculous." The other, "This is inevitable." And between both camps, nothing. No defense. No admission. No response. Only absence. Friends say Todd wasn't playing whistleblower. He was drowning. They insist he wasn't chasing publicity. He was chasing his marriage. One source claims he said the same thing over and over. "I wasn't racing anyone. I just wanted my wife." Another says he put it differently. "I didn't lose her to a person. I lost her to a machine." No one can say which quote is real, but they point to the same wound. This love didn't die in disgrace. It died in a quiet transfer of priority. And now, according to those looking from the outside, the relationship isn't the headline anymore. The space between them is. Because what do you do when no one steals your partner? They just manage them better than you? Once that recording reportedly left Todd's phone, it didn't just spread, it warped. Sources say it didn't flood the web in one wave. It dripped out. In pieces. Without boundaries. One small site released a single sentence. Then another published a summary. Not the sound. Not the clip. Only language. And in the rumor economy, words without evidence outrun facts with ease. By day 2, the internet had already rewritten the marriage into a story of its own. Not with proof. With doubt. Those close to Todd insist he never meant for the message to go public. They say he trusted one person with it. Just one. Someone he believed would hear him. Instead, it was passed along. And like that, the private became public and the public took ownership. That's when a new label began floating around. Not in statements. Not in press. In captions. In comments. In blind items. The bond. Not a romance. Not an affair. Just a concept. A word vague enough for imagination to claim. Unease turned into suspicion. Mystery hardened into story. Feeling became fact. Some blogs called it emotional drift. Others called it corporate takeover. A few went further. They called it betrayal. Yet no one showed paperwork. No steering. Only momentum. According to those near Candy, she never anticipated the storm like this. Not in the beginning. They insist her shock wasn't about the narrative. It was about the velocity. One moment she was focused. The next she was labeled frigid. One moment it was all business. The next it was a plotline. Sources say Candy initially reached out in private. Away from cameras. Away from commentary. Trying to understand how something she lived with every day had suddenly turned venomous. But Todd, they allege, had already crossed a line the conversation couldn't reach. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. Those close to him say he had spoken long before the voice note. In talks. In schedules. In requests for breathing room. In LS to belong again. They claim his struggle was invisible at first. Locked inside. Until it erupted. Behind closed doors, insiders described two worlds crashing into each other. Candy believed she was holding things together. Todd believed he had lost his place entirely. And Don Juan? Depending on who you asked. He was either assistance or silence wearing a suit. One anonymous voice said, he didn't take anything. He just stood where no one else was standing. Another claimed, he stopped being a person. He became a process. And processes don't feel guilt. They increase efficiency. What made everything sharper, sources say, was how uneven the responses looked. Todd disappeared. Candy kept moving. Don Juan kept planning. And the audience became investigators. Old footage crept back online with brand new meanings. Throwaway jokes turned into hidden messages. Grins started to look staged. Fans began mapping timelines from screenshots and thumbnails. She stopped tagging him here. He vanished over there. This interview felt colder. That caption evaporated. Every frame became testimony. And when proof doesn't exist, people manufacture it. By the second week, the story had set like concrete. Two sides. One argued, he's just fragile. The other insisted, he was pushed out. No gray area. No restraint. No forgiveness. An ex-associate, speaking anonymously, reportedly said, Todd wasn't replaced by another man. He was replaced by a structure that didn't require him anymore. If that was true, this wasn't romance gone wrong. It was a takeover. The relationship, they suggested, didn't fall apart. It was redesigned. No announcement. No consent. No seat at the table. One website dropped a sentence that ricocheted everywhere. Some men lose partners. Some lose control. And Todd, insiders say, didn't feel deserted. He felt conquered. That was the pivot. According to people close to him, Todd stopped a case study in disappearance. In displacement. In being edged out silently. People didn't watch him anymore. They translated him. Every picture meant something. Every post signaled something. Every grin meant anything except joy. And in the middle of all of it, the truth faded out. Not Don Juan. Not Candy. Not even Todd. The real adversary was distance. And distance had already taken everything. By the end of that month, everything blurred together. Who struck first? Who trusted whom? Who wanted what? Only one thing stayed the same. The quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The suffocating kind. The kind that ruins you without warning. And Todd, according to the people who swear they know his heart, said one final thing behind closed doors. I stayed quiet because I wanted peace. Now I'm the villain. Because I stayed quiet. By the time the internet finished choosing sides, the marriage had already caved in somewhere far from keyboards and comment sections. No flashes. No posts. No press releases. Just homes that stopped feeling like home. Sources say the end didn't arrive with shouting. It arrived with schedules. Calendars stopped aligning. Doors stopped opening. Messages stopped receiving replies, not with fury, but with fatigue. According to people who were close enough to see it, the house became a stopover, not a sanctuary. One insider put it like this: they didn't argue. They disappeared from each other. And disappearing, when it lasts long enough, becomes a decision. When they finally faced each other, sources insist it wasn't for cameras, and it wasn't gentle. Not in sound. In meaning. Todd, they say, didn't point fingers. He emptied his hands. Not of blame. Of energy. A source who claims to know the words recalls it this way. He told her he no longer felt like a partner. He felt like a guest in his own life. Candy, according to the same source, didn't deny the harm. She denied the motive. Which is often the deepest cut of all. Motive doesn't undo damage. And damage doesn't pardon motive. That night, insiders say, both of them finally faced a truth they'd been dodging. This union didn't shatter in one blow. It thinned out. Every moment when one voice outweighed another. Every time a decision traveled without discussion. Every time distance felt safer than telling the truth. When Todd eventually walked away quietly, with purpose, those close to him say it wasn't because of anyone else. It was because he couldn't find himself anymore. Friends say he told one person near him, "I used to know my place. Now nothing waits for me." After that, there were no more confessions. No notes in the night. No final speeches. Only separation, made official. Candy, meanwhile, fell silent in her own way. Not retreating. Reinforced. She stayed seen. Steady. Working. And the web read that as callous. But those closest to her insist it was something else entirely, survival armor. She didn't disappear, she just stopped explaining herself, one source says. And when a woman stops explaining herself, the world decides it will explain her instead. Don Juan? Sources say he withdrew into silence as well. Not defensive. Not confrontational. Just absent. Which complicated everything more. Because in the absence of answers, the audience creates villains. And silence never protects anyone. It only invites interpretation. Months later, fans would notice something else. Not an announcement. A pattern. No more shared holidays. No more anniversary references. No more domestic snapshots. Everything became either professional or past tense. And Todd? He changed. Not morphologically, but internally. Friends describe a man who stopped performing strength and finally confessed weakness. One claim says he admitted, "I don't hate her. I just don't know how to live where I don't belong." That line, according to one insider, never left him. By the end, this wasn't a scandal story. It was a displacement story. Not about infidelity. About irrelevance. Not about rivalry. About erasure. Not about a person replacing a person. But a system replacing a relationship. The internet still debates. Was Don Juan catalyst or coincidence? Did Candy ignore warning signs, or was she never warned? Was Todd insecure or simply unseen? But the truth? The truth sits in wreckage. Because marriages don't die from explosions. They die from quiet choices made too often.